We have the AEW Grand Slam Tournament of Champions finals set. We have a new champion crowned in WWE and some new branding going on in NXT. We talk about it all next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Join me, it's Ralph Valenti. Ralph will start with what happened on AEW Dynamite on Wednesday night. The semifinals of the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions. Jon Moxley takes care of Sammy Guevara. Bryan Danielson gets his win back against Chris Jericho. So the Blackpool Combat Club will be part of the finals while the Jericho Appreciation Society go 0-2 in the semis. So I know you said Jericho was going to win this tournament. You also said that you wanted Darby Allin to win this tournament. You have gotten this tournament all wrong, Ralph. And the finals, as I predicted last week, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson.
Well, hopefully you're not going to ask me for my opinion on who's going to win at Arthur Ashe, because I guess whoever I'm going to end up picking is going to be the opposite. So I don't know if we really want to go that direction here. But yeah, this was probably the most likely of outcomes. I think I was hopeful they would have tried to do something a little bit different, especially coming out of the whole CM Punk / Bucks fallout, that whole thing, trying to get back on track, which apparently means it's going to be either one of the two biggest stars, I guess, off the top of my head that they have right now, at least working, Moxley or Bryan Danielson. So
well, really Jericho, I think, is a big star too.
Still in the tournament.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying going into Wednesday night, Jericho was still in there, and he's probably
Jericho's in there. Jericho, I mean, honestly, you might even be able to put Jericho above both of them as far as star recognition and name power. So, any one of those three. I mean, Sammy Guevara, I really had no doubt in my mind. Moxley has one of those most protected records in all of pro wrestling, not just AEW. I really didn't think Sammy Guevara was going to go over him. But no, I really don't. It's going to be interesting how they're going to have this whole thing play out. I don't think there's a wrong decision. I think that they're both very good in their own right, and I think that the fan base will be behind either one. It will just be interesting to see kind of heel, face. Do they keep them intact? Does Moxley not win and go on that vacation he was supposed to take? Yeah, so still, even though it is what I think a lot of people would say, the likely finals that a lot of people probably had predicted, I don't think there's a wrong decision you can make.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people probably thought they would go with Moxley Jericho 3, but that's not the case. Instead, we have Moxley Danielson 2, a rematch at Revolution. Moxley did win that match. So does Danielson get his win back against Moxley, become the AEW World Champion? You bring up the vacation that MJF also brought up in his promo immediately after the Moxley match. But at the same time, you talk about the MJF promo, and he's talking about Moxley. They had their face-to-face last week. You think they're hinting towards Moxley versus MJF 2 for, I would think, Full Gear. But does Danielson change that? And, MJF did mention the winner of Jericho Danielson also is going to be put on notice. So perhaps all this talk to Moxley is a red herring for what the eventual plans are going to be of Danielson versus MJF.
I think MJF, no matter who he goes against, he'll be able to build that matchup essentially by himself if he really wanted to. They've certainly been teasing Moxley and MJF. They've been laying it on pretty thick the past couple of weeks, and they already have history from, their previous feuds. But honestly, I think it could go either way. And I think that even if it was Bryan Danielson and MJF that were going to, battle for the title or anything beyond this, I think that would be fine as well.
When is Battle of the Belts 4? Is that in October?
I'd have to look that up.
I think it is. I think it is in October. So what you can theoretically do is have Danielson win, have Battle of the Belts 4 feature MJF cashing in his chip against Danielson, and that's where you have that win, because one, the ratings for Battle of the Belts have not been that good, and
sure,
there really hasn't been anything newsworthy out of the first 3 Battle of the Belts. I'm pretty sure all the matches went as predicted, and there hasn't been any title changes outside of Sammy Guevara winning the TNT Championship in a interim basis against, I think it was Dustin Rhodes, if I'm not mistaken. Other than that, everyone's won in retention. So you have Danielson and MJF, who are huge names in AEW, huge ratings draws. You get people to watch on that Saturday night, and MJF wins and gets people talking out of Battle of the Belts. Then you bring Moxley back from his vacation and build towards Full Gear, and you still get the plan of Moxley versus MJF at Full Gear.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Moxley and MJF is definitely going to be a big feud, no matter what way you shake it. Because for me, Moxley is already a solidified star. He's already beloved by the AEW fan base. The tricky thing, even MJF is finding this out right now, is MJF kind of maintaining that heel persona. He's doing the best he can, but even last night, he still got a favorable reception from the fans.
He found a way to get him to turn, though.
He turns him, but he's always getting that. He's been getting that initial pop ever since he came back. That's not all that uncommon. But anyway, I think that's still a money feud. Whether that you save that for a big pay-per-view, whether that ends up being Full Gear, whether it's another pay-per-view down the road. You know, MJF, even though he's solidified to, I think, most wrestling fans, who especially those following AEW, his stock is certainly rising right now. I think that he's destined for a title win at some point very soon. And should he carry that title to maybe not Full Gear or beyond Full Gear and face Moxley, I think that's something they can save for when he maybe is a little bit bigger, if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see where time goes. But as for next week, I don't really want to ask this, but the people want to know. Who you got next week, Moxley or Danielson?
Elio, the pizza guy.
I mean, it is in New York, which some people think is the pizza capital of the world, but you and I both know it's New Haven, Connecticut.
New Haven, yeah. That's actually solidified by El Prez, Dave Portnoy. It is absolutely, without a doubt, undisputed, all elite pizza in New Haven, Connecticut.
Yep.
Without question.
Sorry, Chicagoans. Sorry, New Yorkers. Sorry, anybody else that wants to put their pizza up there. It's New Haven, bar none. But anyway, back to Queens, back to Arthur Ashe. Who you got?
I am going to go with Bryan Danielson.
So the new AEW World Champion will be Jon Moxley next week. You heard it here, folks. But, you know, we talk about MJF after the match with Jon Moxley. He cut a promo, you know, bringing up Moxley's alcoholism and the demons that he overcame, and MJF saying that he, in fact, is the demon. Then he talks about the reason why he has the chip in the first place, and that is this stable on retainer known as the Firm. Stokely Hathaway comes out with Morrissey, the Gun Club, Lee Moriarty, and Ethan Page. And Stokely Hathaway has this promo. I got to be honest. I have no idea what was going on with this promo.
I felt like I was my head was wrapped around. There was like the Ultimate Warrior speaking to me / like I had no idea what was happening in this segment.
It was weird because Stokely is usually good on the mic. This thing was going all over the place, explaining things that are like, what is he talking about? Then he's trying to explain all the different goals for each person. Morrissey's just like, yeah, he just wants to come here and do whatever he wants. Lee Moriarty wants the pure championship. Okay, fine. Gun Club want to be AEW tag champs. Cool. Ethan Page wants to be All Atlantic champion. Cool. Why does Morrissey not going after a title? Granted, he can't go after the same title MJF is, but he can't go after the TNT championship, the FTW championship. Yeah, that was a little weird to me.
The first people that were initiated in this group, or the first person was
Ethan
Lee
Page.
Moriarty. Okay, it was Ethan Page. That's where I was going with this. This essentially came about because Ethan Page cut a promo about not getting opportunities and things like that. And the first belt he's going to supposedly go after is this belt that I don't think it's even been defended on AEW television yet.
It will be next week.
Okay,
it will be next week against Orange Cassidy, your boy.
I always need certain 5 to 10 minutes to go take a bathroom break, make a sandwich. So that would be perfect. We stopped doing reviews, so it's not like I have to actually watch this. I like Ethan. I like Ethan Page. I like Pac. I'll go this far. I could appreciate Orange Cassidy in the ring. But when you start going with Danhausen and you start going with the Orange Cassidys, and now the pizza guy is literally on TV. I thought it was fake. It wasn't. We might talk about the pizza guy, but I just no. I think there's a couple things heading in the wrong direction. It's much like this whole promo and segment was certainly in the wrong direction. I have no hope for this faction. They will be regulated to dark within the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of generic individuals within that group. Big Cass, he looks like $1 million. That big guys don't have a good history in AEW. Their goals just aren't all that impressive, and I didn't really walk away from that even seeing why they needed to be in a faction to to do these things. It just what is Stokely going to do for them? What is he going to do for them?
He basically was like, "All right, when we're together, but when we're not, we're not." And it's like, okay, I like to make it like an equivalent. Like there's the Justice League and the Avengers where, yes, they're a group of superheroes, but they also have their own little, side, I don't want to say side projects, but like they're the main focus on something else. Like the Hulk does the Hulk things and Iron Man does the Iron Man things. And essentially that's, I think, what they're doing with this stable, the firm. We're like, yeah, it's the Justice League or the Avengers, but the Hulk's going to do Hulk stuff and, Iron Man's going to do Iron Man stuff. But it just, it came across as like long-winded and what are you talking about?
The more I'm thinking about this, the more puzzling it is because again, I'm going back to Ethan Page and I'm only bringing him up because of everybody in that group. I think he's got the most potential. He's got a good look. He's a good promo. He has the it factor when he walks in the room. I mean, he's there. And he talks about not getting opportunities and being overlooked. And he wants to challenge for a title that's hardly televised against a guy that hardly gets opportunities to wrestle on Dynamite. What's that gonna, like, he should be going after Jungle Boy. If Christian's out, go after Jungle Boy. That's a guy, like, okay, that's a guy that's put up on a pedestal. One of the 4 pillars, you're overlooking me. This guy is young.
So Jungle Boy doesn't have a
me.
championship.
He doesn't have to. It's about knocking somebody off that he supposedly is jealous of their spot. That guy is a 4 pillar. Like, that's an easy, I don't know. Look, bottom line, this has Dark, Elevation, Rampage written all over it. I came out of this very much Billy Madison scene. We are now all stupider for having listened to that. And I like Stokely. But yeah, my God, this was not it. This did not land. Even the crowd was dead.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with this. Maybe someone in the comment section could explain it better for us, but...
Let me ask you this. Was there anyone that you've seen in recent history that was more uncomfortable in a situation than Mr. Morrissey when he was given a hug and told, "I love you"? It looked like he looked like a sausage.
It looked like he was not expecting that, and he didn't know how to respond to it. And he's just like, dude, what? Don't hug me. And like, it's awkward. But you bring up the All-Atlantic Championship and Ethan Page going after that title. Obviously, Pac currently holding that title, the only double champion in AEW history after winning the Trios title last week with the Lucha Brothers. And what do they do as a follow-up? They have the Lucha Brothers challenge for the AEW Tag Team Championship. And if I didn't get the chance to check the rankings before watching Dynamite, and I still haven't checked them yet, but I'm pretty sure FTR is still number 1 and still have not gotten an AEW World Tag Team Championship. And yet here's another tag team that goes ahead of them in that situation. And it's the Trios champions who lose this match to Swerve in Our Glory, which obviously this was set up to be a warm-up to the Acclaim next week. So here's the question I have. Did they already bury the Trios titles and the Lucha Brothers having that gold by having them lose this tag team championship match following up their win last week?
I wouldn't say they buried them. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand why you do it. I don't know what sense it makes. These are brand new titles that they won because Kenny and the Bucks can't be there. They're supposed to be prestigious and this big thing because not many promotions, at least but prominent promotions within the United States, are doing the trios titles. WWE doesn't do it, so this is your one thing that your fan base loves. These trio type matches that are all over the place and wild.
I don't know. It feels like this was an odd booking decision to have the Lucha Brothers challenge for these tag titles after just winning the trios titles, just for them to lose. It's like, don't you want the trios titles to look good and have them just be in a tag team match where they win? You know,
let's talk about something good that happened in AEW. Are we talking about any more AEW stuff? We got to end and have something good here because people are going to start thinking I'm being negative for no reason again.
Well, what do you have in mind? Because I had next on our agenda the Toni Storm, Athena versus Britt Baker and Serena Deeb women's tag team match, which had an interesting ending where Toni Storm gets pinned and Britt Baker looks like she's going to hit Toni Storm with a chair afterwards, but Jamie Hayter comes out, pulls the chair out of Britt Baker's hands, but still hits Toni Storm with this. So you're actually starting to get a storyline in the women's division with someone that the fans are behind in Jamie Hayter, someone that has been well pushed, I think, in Toni Storm, and of course the face of the division, Britt Baker. So yes. Obviously there's two separate storylines that may merge as to one where maybe it ends up as a triple threat match, or they do Jamie versus Britt and eventually one of them becomes number one contender against Toni Storm. And don't forget, Thunder Rosa should be coming back fairly soon, I would think, with her back injury. So that means she's got to go and face the winner. So does Britt take the title from Toni, and then we get a revisit of Thunder Rosa versus Britt, and then revisit that all over. Like, there's a lot to dive into here. And I think this actually was a good thing from Dynamite this past Wednesday, where the women's division actually has direction.
As a story, it's not just like, hey, let's just throw people together to have some obscure match. No, I thought this was good. It gave me a reason to kind of pay attention to the match, and I didn't have a problem with it. It makes me want to see where this is going to go, especially considering Britt Baker. It's always good to see her actually doing something. Toni Storm involved in it as the champion, and Jamie Hayter, who seems to be on the rise. So that's all good things.
I think that was part of the reason why last night you look at the ratings and they actually had one of their best nights in a year when it comes to total viewership, 1.175 million viewers, which is actually pretty good for them. And part of that was just because of they put the ratings draws in. Moxley, MJF, Britt Baker, Jericho, Danielson. I mean, there wasn't really a spot on this show where there, quote unquote, wasn't a ratings draw in a quarter hour. Like, they did a really good job formatting wise with this show last night. Some things I question the execution and some of the booking decisions, but I think Tony Khan at least planned a good show to follow up what happened last week, which I thought was a really, really good show. I thought this show was still decent with a couple blemishes. I had no problem with the show itself. A good show. Not the best show that they've had. That's how I would point it out.
Yeah, it advanced some storylines. Even if you were somebody like me who didn't necessarily like the stuff with Stokely, or it was confusing, or whatever the case may be, it pulled a good number, which is always a good thing. Mm-hmm. And it gave you a reason to watch next week, or at least some of the storylines. So that's still good.
Of course. But, the one thing I would say, no Wardlow, no FTR. And I think the reason why FTR wasn't on was because Dax Harwood lost in his Ring of Honor World Championship match on Rampage against Claudio Castagnoli. Because I really can't find another reason why FTR wasn't on this week, or Wardlow, especially when Wardlow's trying to say that it's Wardlow's world and he's hasn't lost momentum. And the follow-up to that is not being on TV. Now, I don't know if he's planned for Dynamite. I don't think he is, but Rampage, that's what I mean. Rampage. Is he scheduled for Rampage this week? I don't think so, but where's Wardlow?
There's been few things on the top of my mind that I just can't think of a reason why FTR and Wardlow are not on almost weekly on Dynamite. That's one of the mind scratching things, but we will see. I guess that conversation will be a little more lively when it comes time to talk about whoever that may be that wins Booker of the Year. I would assume Tony's going to win it. I don't know if he truly deserves it based on this past year, but we will see.
I don't know. I mean, even though he's only been officially head of creative for a month and a half, 2 months now, Triple H is already making a claim that he could be Booker of the Year and making all these changes that people love. And one of them happened on Tuesday night, where it seems like NXT 2.0 is no more. And going back to, some people are saying black and gold, but technically it's black and white with their new logo. So instead of the tie-dye Nickelodeon-esque looking NXT logo that they have, they got rid of the tie-dye look. They got rid of the GAC. And it's just a nice, clean gold and white logo, NXT. So, yes, they got a new logo. But will we really see any changes to what we see on screen with NXT that we, have seen from the past year with NXT 2.0?
In ring, I don't really think you're going to see all that much of a difference. But I do think that the whole vibe is going to be different. I don't think the color scheme is going to be different, obviously. I think the feel of it is going to be different. I think they're going to try to mesh a little bit of kind of what's going on now, but paying homage to the roots of NXT and what it once was. So, if anything, I think we'll get something similar to what the old black and gold was. Maybe not exactly what it was, but I do think that we're going to see a little more of what it used to be like, and not so much this flashy in your face, sports entertainment, if you will, show.
Do they go back to the heavy metal theme song? And does Poppy come back and do musical performances?
I don't see why not. Look, if Triple H is head of creative, number one, that was his baby. Number two, he's already brought back so many people that he had faith in that were developed in that system. So
true.
What makes anybody think he's not going to go back to what produced those people? He believed in a system that he said this in his interview with Ariel Helwani. He said that had to be changed because of COVID. Whether you believe that or not is entirely on you. He said we could not do what we once did. We could not train the people. We could not get them where they needed to be. So it had to be something different. It was something different for quite a while. And I think he wants to get back to the roots of what NXT was.
I mean, there's still a lot of names in NXT that I think are going to be a part of the future of WWE. You bring up Braun Breaker. You bring up, Mello Hayes, Solo Sikoa. And it seems like, he gets called up to SmackDown, gets involved in the main event of Clash of the Castle, has a no DQ match with Drew McIntyre on his first night on SmackDown. And on top of that, he goes back to NXT and wins the North American Championship. So now the Bloodline has 7 championships to their name. What's next for Solo Sikoa? What's next for the Bloodline? And most of all, with Mello Hayes dropping the title, do you think a call-up to the main roster could be happening soon? Yes, I understand he was attacked by Wes Lee to kind of set this up, but is that a short-lived feud and then he goes up to the main roster?
I think he's going up to the main roster. He's very talented. He's good on the mic. He's got a good personality. Him dropping the title, I think, is probably an indication that he's going to get called up. The other thing that I think this whole situation is an indication of is if you had any doubt that Roman would not carry the title for an extended period of time, certainly into WrestleMania, I think the more titles the Bloodline actually gets and holds, the less likely it is for Roman to lose. Because that just goes to show you, they're trying to do something. Look, if they're now going to NXT with the guy that just got called up to win titles, and he's probably going to bring that title on SmackDown, and that they're going to tie all of that into a storyline. they're going to try to do things with this group bigger than what they've already done. And Roman Reigns is the focal point, the centerpiece of that whole thing. So I don't see him dropping the title. Sami Zayn's the only one. And they've already touched on this. They said, like, where's your goal? So,
well, here's the thing. And Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful brought this up last month. And I just saw him kind of bring it back on Twitter today. Is have Sami Zayn win the 24/7 championship, but brag as if he's at the same level as Roman Reigns. That would be comedy gold. That's must-see TV stuff like that. I've seen some people say have Sami Zayn go after Gunther for the IC title.
Oh.
And then just have Gunther. No, but I'm saying like have Gunther just beat the crap out of him.
Oh.
Or have the Bloodline interfere with Gunther, and then you have a faction warfare between the Bloodline and Imperium. And then you have
game for that.
Which would be eventually lead to Roman Reigns versus Gunther at some point, which I'd be down for that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
and you know, we talk about trios title in AEW. Quietly, you kind of see WWE make a case where they might be able to build a trios division at some point. Yes, I understand they still have to recoup their tag team division that Vince completely destroyed in the last 20 years, but the Bloodline, Imperium, the Brawling Brutes, I know I'm missing a few others, but like you could put a few trios just from those three right there and then add a couple more and you got yourselves a trios division. Very interesting, you know, but I'm interested to see what happens next with Solo Sikoa. I mean, does he go? Obviously, I would think he carries the North American title onto SmackDown. And do people from NXT get, you know, go back and forth like Solo Sikoa does? I mean, I think this is great. I think it really is. And just shows the domination of the Bloodline. And really haven't seen a faction like this, at least on the main roster level, since Evolution, which, of course, held by Triple H. So,
right.
Well, I mean, we'll see where time tells with that. But, you know, talk about SmackDown, Sikoa's debut on there. But something else that happened on SmackDown last week was we found a new number one contender for the SmackDown Women's Championship in a fatal five-way. And it was Ronda Rousey winning that title, or winning that match to get the title shot. I got to ask though, is this good storytelling or is this lazy booking? Because Shayna Baszler won the number one contender spot with a gauntlet match that had 5 women in it. This was essentially the same thing. Instead of it being a gauntlet match, they just put all 5 women in one match and the first fall won. I feel like it's a little lazy on Triple H's part here.
I don't know if I'd call it lazy. I think I'd call it predictable, but sometimes I think predictable is okay. You know, sometimes you need to do the thing that makes the most sense. It doesn't always need to be this crazy, convoluted, you know, entangled storyline and, you know, intricate. Because I think right now they kind of have enough of that going on. Because we just talked about Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, and Solo Sikoa. He's great. And he won that championship, but not everybody knows. It's not like he's a household name just yet. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sometimes it's okay to do what is the most obvious of things. I mean, look, we just talked about AEW. Bryan Danielson, yes, you could have made a case for Chris Jericho, but I think a lot of people, if you ask them, you know, who do you think is going to go to the finals? Moxley and Bryan Danielson, probably a lot of people felt they were going to go with that. That's fine. It makes sense. Nobody's going to complain about it. I think Ronda challenging for the championship makes sense.
I knew eventually they were going to revisit Liv versus Ronda, but especially when Ronda's talking about how she didn't mind being in storylines that didn't involve the title. Literally a week later, she's in a storyline where she's involved in the title. And I'm going to venture a guess that Ronda's going to win that title back. You think Charlotte's going to be coming back soon. So they're going to revisit Charlotte versus Ronda. And that happens to be for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So like literally it's been 1 month where she's not involved with the championship. And granted, Ronda's gotten herself super over in this time. So why not just keep her separate? Let this Adam Pearce thing, see how that develops. Have some women tie, with Adam Pearce. What's Lacey Evans doing? Put in a month program with Ronda Rousey. She probably gets more out of it in a losing effort than Liv Morgan will. Is it?
Shotzi, maybe.
Yeah. What's Shotzi Blackheart doing now? That's one of Triple H's favorites towards the tail end of the black and gold era. What's that?
Wonder if she'll get the tank back.
She should have the tank back, and she should not be a heel. Turn her back babyface and bring the tank back. I mean, between her and Raquel Rodriguez, those have been the most questionable. What did they do to them since Triple H took over? You would think, we see Big Mommy Cool and have that music come back and everything. And they've gone further in the opposite direction with Raquel Rodriguez. I know that we're not going to give her Raquel Gonzalez name back, but let's at least get back to Big Mommy Cool. And speaking of Raquel Rodriguez, she won the women's tag team championships with Aaliyah a couple weeks ago. Granted, Dakota Kai was not the legal woman in the match. Monday Night Raw comes and we have a rematch for those women's tag team championships. And Io Sky and Dakota Kai win the match. They are the new women's tag team championships, which has everybody in the inner wrestling community going, why did they put the titles on Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez to begin with if 2 weeks later they're just going to put them on Io and Dakota, who were predicted to win this tournament in the first place?
I don't have a good answer for this one. I don't know. It's very strange. Unless there's something, beneath the surface that we're not thinking of, an injury of some sort. I don't know. This one was a little weird.
But if it's an injury involved, then Io and Dakota wouldn't have wrestled in the 6-women tag at Clash of the Castle. So it can't be an injury. The only thing I could think of is maybe Bruce Pritchard whispered in Triple H's ear because he loves the whole let's put belts on people just to add credibility to their resume, just so that when someone else beats them, it's oh, well, they beat a former champion or they beat a champion. So this might be a Bruce Pritchard idea that Triple H was all right, one of my favorites, Raquel Rodriguez, gets a championship. But then again, the other thing too is you still have to build the women's tag team division. And it does create a little bit of, oh my God, what a shock that Io and Dakota did not end up winning the tournament, even though it was heavily predicted they would. So maybe it was just a shock thing. And then, all right, we got the shock. They got a defense, so we can't just say they were paper champions or whatever. And then we'll give the titles to Dakota and Io. And then obviously they have a storyline already in place with Alexa and Asuka that ties into also Bianca Belair with Bayley. That's the only thing I could think of.
Your guess is as good as mine. Again, this was a strange one.
While we have that championship all squared away, and we'll see what happens in the near future. Another championship that's going to be on the line next week. Seth Rollins, who refuses to have a rematch with Matt Riddle, has his eyes on gold, even though he was kind of hinting at the Universal Undisputed Championship. It's Bobby Lashley that meets up with him backstage and challenges him to a match for the United States Championship. So next week on Raw, Bobby Lashley versus Seth Rollins. So the way we started this episode is the way we end this episode, Ralph. Who wins? Rollins or does Lashley retain?
I'm going to say Lashley retains by interference from Riddle. It's more than clear Riddle wants a rematch. Seth doesn't want it.
Maybe I'm overthinking this, but perhaps they are putting the title on Seth because, let's face it, everybody, Roman is the top champion. Even though he's not going to appear on Raw, even though he should, Raw needs that top champion, and that's what the U.S. title is going to be. It's the top title on Raw. And I think Seth holding that title and Riddle going after that title adds more to their story for Extreme Rules. Meanwhile, Lashley, does he lose anything by losing to Rollins? No. Maybe he drops a couple notches next year in the PWI 500, but he instantly could go into the chase against Roman Reigns. Because let's face it, there has to be people on Raw that go after Roman Reigns. And if there's a pay-per-view after Survivor Series that Lashley could challenge him for, or he's the challenger at Royal Rumble, build him up now without the United States Championship on him, and he's a credible threat to Roman Reigns at Royal Rumble, which would still be a good feat for Roman to beat, and also Lashley, in a losing effort, gets to that main event level that he's just not gotten to yet in this run in WWE, but he's pretty much done everything else except that since really the pandemic started. He's probably the most protected wrestler outside of Roman since the pandemic.
Lashley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like, he hasn't lost that many matches, and when he has, there's always been some like outside interference that's protected him, including when Riddle dropped when Riddle beat him for the US title. MVP got involved somehow and, cost him the match, I think. So, and Big E cashed in on him after he was hurt. So he does not lose clean very often.
You're right. I mean, they definitely do need to build people up for Roman to face, even if that means they just need to limp across the finish line so Cody can take the title from him at WrestleMania, if that's the plan.
If that's the plan. It could be Braun. It could be Braun too. I mean, he's gotten some huge pops since he's come back. And he looks good. And I mean, granted, he did trip while running around the ring doing his choo-choo thing, but nonetheless, it could be Strowman, it could be Cody, it could be Lashley, it could be Drew. They could revisit that. It could be Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens are definitely building up.
Right, especially the stuff with Theory. And Theory could just cash in and ruin it for everybody. They could always do that too. So it'll be interesting to see. Let us know in the comments who you think will dethrone Roman Reigns. Who do you think wins between Lashley and Rollins, Moxley and Danielson? And don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, SCPP Podcast. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.